Hey guys, Stephanie here with the Aeroponic Tower channel, and today I want to take you on a garden tour, show you all the food that we have the first week of June, and share some tips and tricks along the way as far as how to manage your plants, where's the best place to put plants, and all of those things. Let's go, let's take a closer look at the towers. All right, and I have my waste bucket here and a bin, and this is actually how I collect when I want to do a big juicing haul, which is about once a week, twice a week sometimes. This time of year, I put it all in a plastic bin so I can wash it and let it soak for a little bit, just because you never know what is on the food right now. Little creepy crawlies, it's that time of year. This tower here has a giant kohlrabi, and we're coming to the end of the brassica seasons, all of the winter garden things. So I'm actually excited because it'll free up space on the towers for, you know, the peppers and other things to kind of be the shining star. It gets overwhelming, like the squash are starting to get big. So when they get this big, it's just time to eat them. But I don't have time today to harvest and cook all this up. So I am gonna take a few of these leaves. I need to do a big juicing haul. All right, and then up here in the top, we have some really fun things. Up here in my baby greens section, we have these turnips. If you do turnips, you can do two side by side. Sorry, this camera's not gonna wanna focus. Here we go. Those are two turnips growing out of one port, so you can do two. I like to do one typically if I'm growing them in the baby green section, but two is fine as well, and those are doing amazing. But all my arugula here is starting to bolt. It's a little too hot for arugula, so I'm gonna harvest all of that and make that my juice for this week. And I just use my hori knife to chop off the tops, throw the scraps in the waste bin. I give my rockwool scraps with roots to the chickens, and they seem to really like it. Oh, wrong bucket. Those are the good ones. And I make sure to have new seedlings to take the place of what I'm removing. But I want to give the top of this a cleaning, so I'm actually not going to put those in today. You can go a couple of days. You don't want to leave them too long. Definitely if you get a lot of rain, because water can get in there. But a couple of days until I have time to clean this up a little will be just fine. Here I have a cilantro that's going to seed already before it even turned into a plant, just because it's too hot. That's why I like these towers. This tower is actually going to be coming in the house to grow things like cilantro and lettuce and all of those things you can't grow in the summer. And I often get the question why I don't just cut off the tops and allow it to regrow. And the reason is, when you do that, your food can grow back and have a different texture, flavor. Things like arugula get more bitter and spicier, lettuce as well. So I have found it's more cost effective just to have new seedlings ready to go, because these mature plants also have big root systems that require more water and more nutrients for them to continue to grow, where new seedlings will pop up really quickly and don't take as many resources. For a while there, and all of this needs to be eaten. So just this and cleaning up some leaves as we walk through the garden will be plenty to make about 6 jars of green juice. And I shared in another video, I'll link that below, on what I put in my green juice. All right, so this tower here is zucchini, squash, cucumbers, and they're doing really great. We've got lots of cucumbers flowering, and we have some zucchini just getting started. Also the squash, there's also peppers on here, and the peppers are starting to flower. There's some butter lettuce that needs to be harvested. All right, and this tower right here is a great example of how you can set up a tower. This is a flex, and I have these zucchini and squash kind of towards the mid, close to the bottom, but I try not to put my squash on the bottom if I can help it. And the reason is the roots are gonna go into the tank, and you don't want your roots in the tank. So if you keep them one section up, then they're close enough to the ground that you can start to clean up the leaves. These are a little thick right now and could be cleaned up some, and allow it to start draping down. And then underneath it I have my cucumbers, and those do great because I can actually get those to climb up if I want, or I can let them kind of grow around the side of the tower. So I've got cucumbers on the bottom. I've got my squash up here. I wouldn't go any higher than midway. This is probably the highest I would go with the squash. That's going to be a big squash because they get so big and can get so heavy. Up to the top here, I have eggplant. Eggplant like to get a lot of sun. They like heat. So these, and they grow upright. So it's a great place if you want to get them up top and out of the way. You can also tie these with some twine to the tower. I just tie a string around to hold them up. These do get heavy when they start to fruit, so you'll kind of have to manage that part. There's also a cage you can buy from Tower Garden that helps. And then if you want big heads of lettuce, you want to put your lettuce up top. So over here I have a romaine, and it's doing great and it's large, and keeping it tucked in here is a great way to use a grow port that you might not be able to grow something big in, like a tomato or a pepper, because we have all these squash that are so big over here. And this keeps it cool, so on hot summer days it's going to be protected, but it's going to stay a little bit smaller. If you want to grow big heads of lettuce, put them on the top. They just do amazing right at the very top, especially if you want to grow something like an iceberg lettuce or something like this butter lettuce that has a nice big head and you want it to develop that nice firm lettuce head. Definitely put it up top. There's a variety called Crispini that does really well on the towers. That's an iceberg lettuce and just so gorgeous, so delicious. All right, and on the back of this tower, I have more eggplant. This is my pot size eggplant. This is a dwarf size eggplant. I forget the name. I get a lot of my dwarf plants from Park Seeds. I have some peppers here, more Buttercrisp lettuce. These are ready to be harvested. I've got more squash. This is a yellow squash, more eggplant, more lettuce down here. So many things just on one tower. I have 28 plants on this tower, and most of them are foods that are going to be coming in the next couple of weeks and will provide food for us all the way through up until winter when these towers have to go inside. And about a fourth of the grow ports, I keep things like lettuce and other fast turnover produce, just because some of this stuff is going to get so big and it doesn't leave a lot of room for the other things. This gives me some fast turnover food to just fill in the little spots that I have open. Over here, this is a cayenne pepper. How cute is that? We have some purple kale. This goes back to the idea of where I take about a fourth of the grow ports and grow things that we're just going to munch off of or turn over really quickly. And then I have a lot of very big foods like the zucchinis and lots of peppers on this tower. I have some basil tucked in here. These are, I believe, a jalapeno pepper. Just look at all those blooms. Jalapenos were 50 cents per pepper last year at the farmer's market, which is just absurd. So we definitely want to be growing whatever we can these days. Food is so expensive. This is a purple pepper. I forget the name. I'll edit it in. This is a sweet pepper, so it's not spicy, and it makes a great snacking pepper. We have just our standard bell peppers. I'm growing yellow, orange, red, and green. And obviously they're all green until they change colors. But we're starting to get nice bell peppers coming in. Towards the bottom, I have parsley, giant bunch of parsley. I'm actually excited to eat that, but I don't have another one growing, so I've been holding off. There are peas. And this is the little Tom pea, and it typically does really well, but for some reason it just has stayed small. Oh, yep, that's why. It's got powdery mildew. Well, now we know why. Okay, so I'm going to spray that with my homemade formula that I need to modify. There's some basil. As we go through here, this is a jungle. It's completely massive. Everything is huge, like insanely huge. And I need to do some harvesting. I've fallen behind a little bit, but it's, I mean, as you can see, it's like you can't even walk through here. It's just a jungle of food, which is incredible. I'm not complaining. all of that up there. Broccoli and cauliflowers. The cauliflowers are all starting to form their cauliflowers. So those should be able to be harvested soon, which will help. All the kohlrabi are coming out in the next couple of days. But I have some curly kale in here. There's a baby greens extension kit on the top of this tower. This is endive, absolutely gorgeous. You can grow beets, and I have my beets tucked in here. And if with beets or any kind of root vegetable, you just want to make sure it's not growing in the grow port, so you just kind of pull them out a little every once in a while. There's some celery poking through. The amount of food on this tower is kind of ridiculous. This is kale, and it is a large leaf kale, and it's actually gigantic. I don't know if you guys can see that, but one leaf, like this is the tip. So it's probably 10 of my hands long. Gigantic. I'm gonna make kale chips. I keep saying that and I keep not doing it, so we need to actually do that. Up here, I've got my purple lady bok choys. These are all gonna start getting too warm, so we definitely wanna harvest and eat those this week. Most of this Mizuna. So yeah, a lot of this stuff needs to be harvested and eaten, and I often get the question, how do you eat it all? A lot of it I'll preserve, and then I'll give some to friends. But these cabbage, for example, these are all a Napa cabbage, and I'm gonna make kimchi with them. So that preserves them. They are ready to be eaten. We don't want them to flower. Looks like this one is about to, so I'm gonna pull those out tonight, and I'm gonna ferment all of those in the baby greens section over here. What you'll often see me do when we can do cold weather crops is I'll put things like these Chinese cabbage in the baby greens section. And obviously this is not a baby green, this is a full cabbage. It's absolutely gorgeous. But by putting it in the baby green section, there's several of them up here, it forces them to stay a little bit smaller, and then it becomes one meal when I'm ready to harvest it. So instead of having a cabbage like this one that's gigantic and you really have to come up with a way to preserve it or eat a lot of cabbage during the week, if I can grow some of these smaller ones, then to make stir fry or something for the kids, I can just come grab that for one meal, and I don't have so much to have to worry about. So just a tip and trick there. There's all sorts of baby greens and things tucked in here. Still have some bok choy in the small stage. This is a tot soy. Green beans. The green beans are starting to produce. I've got green and purple beans. Lots of cucumbers. I actually saw a cucumber today. Where was it? Let's see, there's one right there. So the cucumbers are starting to come in. This is a gherkin, so it's a teeny tiny one anyway. Love those. That's fast food. Over here, this is super fun. It's a dinosaur kale, and it's kind of tucked in with this cabbage. And then above it, tomatoes. All the tomatoes are starting to fruit, or starting to bloom. And then this tower over here, all right, and this tower here has the most tomatoes on it. This is something to be mindful of. I have 2 tomatoes here that are close to the top. I need to get a cage on this one pretty quickly. And these are dwarf tomatoes, so they're not gonna get much taller. They'll get fuller on the top. So it's fine if they're going above the tower, but they definitely are going to fall over if I don't put a cage on those. So I'm gonna get that set up. In between there is fennel. If you have larger full-size tomatoes, you definitely need to grow not on the bottom, because again then the roots go into the tub, but on the second to the bottom. And if there's roots in there, you can just put your hand in and rip them out. I don't see any in this one. I try to keep it pretty maintained. The reason is it'll just use a ton of water if the roots are sitting in there. That's called a deep water method. I forget what it's called. It has a name when you grow and just like let the roots sit in water like that. And that's not what we're doing. We're growing in aeroponics. We want our roots in the air. So lots of tomatoes on this one. I've got leeks growing. I've got gorgeous celery. This is an eggplant that's blooming. it will need a cage too. So I'm going to build that real quick and I'll show you guys what that looks like. Aside from that, I think we've seen it all. Fennel. Right now it's a collection of herbs, fennel, cucumbers, lots and lots of cabbage that needs to be eaten. All the brassica jungle. That's the brassica jungle back there. Really excited to kind of be done with the brassicas, to be quite honest. Over here we've got our cabbages and peppers and more tomatoes. Lots of green beans. This plant right here, this is a micro dwarf tomato. And I'm growing this just to show what it's like, because I'm writing an ebook on tomatoes specifically for aeroponic gardening, or gardening in small spaces. And this produces tons of little fruits. We've got our little tomatoes here. But the last time I grew this, I discovered that this has been bred out of flavor and texture. So the fruit don't actually taste very good and don't have a great texture. That's how it was last year. So I thought I'd give it one more try and then kind of write that up, just so if you want to explore growing smaller tomatoes in your towers, we want to be growing things that are actually going to taste good. These are all dwarf varieties that I did more research on. This looks sick. It's actually just a variegated tomato. This is a pepper leaf tomato. This is more of a standard leaf tomato. And these I chose based on flavor, the type of fruit, and the texture, and the size, and the color. So I'm hoping all of those turn out really well. 21 different varieties growing, so I can put all of those in the ebook and we can grow the best tasting tomatoes possible. The reason we want to grow dwarfs is they use less water, take up less space, use less minerals, and if we can still get that great tasting fruit, it just makes it easier to manage a tomato this size versus one that can get so cumbersome in the garden. All right, let's build this cage together. And sorry guys, but the video of me building this cage got corrupted, but I did want to show you some images. This is the grow cage, and I will post a link below. It's really great because it's simple. One of the biggest struggles I had when I was soil gardening is trying to find ways to trellis things, and it was always expensive and messy and difficult. And this grow cage is super simple. The only thing you want to be mindful of is it's only going to be 3 rows high. So if you want it to go as high as your extension kit, you will need to order 2 of them, so you have some extra rings to make it to the right height. And because I only used 1 ring out of the second grow cage, that left me with 2 rings that I was able to add to another tower just towards the bottom to hold up a couple of plants that needed some support on the bottom. So you can maneuver these in a couple of different ways. All right, here's the trick to saving your net pots. So I'm going to take off all the leaves that I don't want to eat. I think that's it. The rest of these look good. Pull that off. I'm going to put it down there to wash it. And that's it. If they've got a lot of roots in them, sometimes I'll let the roots die back. I'll just toss it in the garden and leave it in the garden until the roots die back, and then it just pops out. Or I throw them in with the chickens and the chickens eat around it, and then I go collect them later. All right. And because I'm juicing, I'm just cutting off the base to give the chickens some extra, and I'm gonna go ahead and juice that whole cabbage. So delicious, can't wait. All right guys, thanks for joining me. I know it's kind of hard to see on these garden tour videos because the camera is horizontal and the towers are vertical, but I hope this gives you ideas and shows you the abundance of food that you can grow on an aeroponic tower garden. This is my grocery store. I'm growing the things that I buy at the grocery store: tomatoes, eggplants, peppers, herbs, lettuces, cabbages, green beans, definitely green beans, melons, squash, all of those things that I buy at the grocery store, that is what I'm using my towers to grow, so that we don't have to rely on the grocery store anymore, and we can start to have some food freedom, freedom from the cost of inflation, freedom from the pesticides that are being sprayed on food. A peel is coming out, A-P-E-E-L. It's going to be allowed on organic foods. This allows me to take back control of a huge portion of our food that we were relying on the grocery store for prior to this. That's so giant. Thanks for joining me, guys. I'll see you in the next video.